We talked a lot about Outer Range Season 1 on this channel. Season 2 is finally here. It dropped every single episode, so let's discuss it. What's up, Flick fans? Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about Outer Range Season 2. Is it as good as the first? And is Josh Brolin awesome? Of course he is.
They say it took 6 days to make the Earth. How did they know it was 6?
So in Outer Range, we're centered on Royal Abbott, a rancher fighting for his land and family who discovers an unfathomable mystery at the edge of Wyoming's wilderness. This is a thrilling Western supernatural saga that examines how we grapple with the unknown. Of course, this is rated TV mature. There are some thematic moments and cussing, a little bit of violence here and there, but really, the idea of dealing with the unknown is even more, somehow, more prominent in Season 2 than it was in Season 1 because we're asking more questions, but we're also getting bigger and seemingly more fantastical questions and answers to those questions. And man, I was, after the first episode, I was once again re-engaged. And it is strange that they're dropping every episode at once this time around, and they did it weekly before. How is that going to play? I'm not sure, but I did enjoy binging this. So that was a really nice, all right, what's going on in this next episode? We can watch it right now. But at the same time, is that word of mouth going to stay consistent? And are we going to get a Season 3? Because that's really important, especially after the finale. Okay! So I thought the first season of Outer Range gave us some nice setup, establishing numerous plot points from the whole to who is this character to where has this character disappeared to. And by the time we got to that finale, didn't have a whole lot of answers, but we were left with some engaging things to chew on before getting into Season 2. And Season 2, I believe, has a more fluent and almost more in-depth way of telling its story. Now, that's easy to do once you establish everything. Usually that's what a first season is for. But now that we know these characters, we can start to explore them a little more, bring about various plot points. We can answer some of those things that we needed answered in Season 1, but start asking more questions and more mysteries that we're having to solve. And the big one this time around, at least in the first episode, is where the heck is Amy, this 8-year-old girl? She disappeared. Now, there have been plenty of disappearances and reappearances and certain characters who we think are other characters that may or may not have been from the past or present, so
I am so confused.
Lots of things going on here, but Brolin's Royal feels connected to Autumn, as many differences as they have, because he believes that Autumn is somehow his granddaughter. And Cecilia, who is also dealing with the disappearance of her granddaughter, is not handling it as well. They're both handling it poorly in their own separate ways, but Autumn is, or at least she seems like the key here at the end of last season, beginning of this season, and their dynamic in those first 2 episodes, especially she and Josh Brolin, it's really fun, but it's also fascinating. Imogen Poots does a nice job playing a character who feels like she may be out of her time, but then you have some other characters who were swallowed up by the whole at the end of Season 1 in Joy and Perry, and especially when you see Joy for that first time at the beginning of this season, you are just on the edge of your seat, stressed out for her, because it's like, where in the world is she and how did she get here? Well, we know how she got here. It's the hole, the big black hole. And the hole's caused a lot of chaos in a very dark, on Netflix, if you've ever seen that series, you know what I'm talking about, kind of way, to where you don't really know where anyone's from. Even Royal, who's sharing his own secrets to Cecilia early on in this season, like, hey, I'm not even who you think I am. And so that has caused a lot of chaos in this small town, and people around this small town are very worried about someone like a Cecilia. We see she and Autumn visit that church service at the beginning of the season. Everyone's just kind of talking smack, and Autumn, who should have really been there in the first place, is just like, hey, what's wrong with you people? This woman has been through enough. But at that point, she's not been through all the things she's about to go through. And there's some crazy things that our characters are doing because of the journey that they're on. One sequence, or many sequences, but the way that these are filmed, the dark mineral abuse scenes that are just the most psychedelic and almost horrifying things to witness. I thought there was such a spin of creativity on those moments, and those types of things in this show sprinkled throughout Season 2 made it almost even more sci-fi than it was in Season 1, because in Season 1, you're asking all of these questions, you're unveiling these mysteries, but in Season 2, they can take those ideas and expand upon them, which made for some very inventive sci-fi sequences. One of the really interesting subplots in this season, one episode in particular that almost shifts genres in its entirety because there's a Western flair to this show, but one episode specifically where Joy pops out and you get to see her live this very small span of her life in a completely different time period, from start to finish in that episode. And we join her in other episodes, but this was where we really got to explore her character, the how and why of what she's going to do about this entire situation, and the people that she's able to meet, and the horrifying nature of the journey that she's on. So that one specifically, some people may feel like it's out of pocket, like, it doesn't really belong in this season, but those types of subplots were things that I found myself compelled by, especially when the other storylines start to get a little repetitive. And I did feel that in Season 2. We switched showrunners in Season 2, and while, like I said, I like the narrative flow, there was a bit of a disconnect with some of the ideas that they established in Season 1 and they don't really ever hit on in Season 2. Now, they introduce some really great things that I was completely on board with, but I was left wondering at the end of Season 2, what if they would have focused on that thing that they really focused on in Season 1 just a bit more in Season 2? Would I have felt more satisfied, and would that have impeded on the new ideas introduced? So sometimes switching showrunners can cause a show to have a bit of a different feel. Stylistically, it was very similar, and the acting was just as good in Season 2. I did feel a bit of a difference in Season 2, and flowed really well, but I do wish some of the ideas would have been expanded upon just a bit more. I watched the episodes and then looked at who directed some of them, and I think this may be Josh Brolin's directorial debut. He directed the 6th episode, which most of the time, a show like this, the penultimate episode, is the one with all of the madness. And then the next episode's just kind of wrapping things up. That's definitely how this feels, while posing new questions for the future that really does require a Season 3, but I thought Brolin did a nice job, man. Some explosive things happening in that 6th episode, and that's when it really, a lot of things hit their breaking point, and there are some characters that I've not even talked about yet. Obviously, a lot of the crazy things happening are surrounding the character of Autumn, and in that 6th episode, it's when everything is kind of building up, and her behavior has just become too much, and certain characters have to take matters into their own hands. I believe that was even the summary of the episode. But you also have other characters that are very important. Wayne, played by Will Patton, is one of my favorite characters in the show. We saw what happened to him in Season 1, and now miraculously he's back at the forefront of this series. Or is he? Do they kind of throw away a couple of things about his story? Don't focus as much on him. That's for you to decide while you're watching, but I do think he does a great job. Of course, you have Billy and Rhett. There are numerous subplots throughout this season. Tom Pelfrey's Perry, which is, it may be the most, not the most fleshed out, but the most interesting one for me, and you'll see why you watch. It really allows us to learn a lot more about his character in a very subtle way. And just beyond that, the idea of existence and faith and purpose and how this show deals with that, and why is this happening to us in the first place, these characters, whether it be these trippy moments where they're basically doing drugs and their eyes are black and it's really freaky, or does this plane of existence, the way that we came about and why we're here, does it really tell us who we are? And so you're asking these questions about these characters as they are realizing or coming to these realizations as well. And I really like the script in that way. Again, it can come across as a bit convoluted, and sometimes in Season 2 especially, it goes off on its own little path, and I do wish it would have spent more time on certain characters that I cared about more. But all in all, I like this type of big sci-fi Western where you're asking a ton of questions, getting answers, but asking more questions in the process. Also, one more positive, the soundtrack was really good, and I guess the score, but the soundtrack really worked in this season. Now, that was as spoiler-free as I could possibly get. If you'd like to see a spoiler review, dropping that thumbs up is the best way to tell me, and let me know what you thought of Season 2, better or worse than Season 1. I couldn't turn my hand. There we go. Season 2 manages to keep most of these fantastical themes and ideas intact, while it presents more intriguing paths and ideas for our characters to explore. Brolin's Royal remains the centerpiece of the series, but this ensemble and the consistent misdirects keep it mostly fresh. Again, some things that I think they could work on for Season 3, but I'm still engaged by this show, and I'm still entertained, and that's what's most important. So, is this sophomore outing one that you're going to be watching or binging on Prime Video this weekend, or do you even still care? And if you don't, why are you here? That's my question. Thanks for watching. and I'll be back later this weekend with more series reviews.